They thought the worst was in the skies. They were wrong. Last time, we showed you how Burkina Faso rewrote the war from above. Akina drones that never blink, TB2s that strike without mercy, rocket storms that turned ambush zones into burning craters. But what the world witnessed was only half the revolution. Because while analysts panicked over drones, Burkina Faso was building something far more dangerous, a military that moves. In part one, we witnessed a nation reclaim sovereignty, not through speeches, but through precision, through discipline, through fire. From the sky to the front line, Traoré's army no longer fights to survive. It fights to define the future, not as a proxy, not as a pawn, but as a power of its own. And now that power is taking form, with wheels, with armor, with velocity. This is not about holding the line. This is about shifting the battlefield entirely. What comes next is the true backbone of Burkina's revolution, the armored force that strikes before the enemy blinks. WMA 301, VP-11, Aider Yalan. Machines that don't just carry soldiers, they carry sovereignty in motion. Let's go.
There is a kind of war that cannot be won from bunkers. You do not defend a nation by waiting. You defend it by moving, fast, decisive, armored. That was the lesson Burkina Faso learned in blood. For years, its troops held static positions, outposts surrounded by insurgents, supply convoys ambushed between villages. The enemy controlled the terrain by exploiting its unpredictability, narrow roads, shifting sands, hidden explosives. But Traoré's military doctrine rewrote the rules. Don't defend the battlefield, move it. Burkina Faso turned mobility into sovereignty, and they did it with steel. Enter the WMA 301, a Chinese-designed armored fighting vehicle armed with a 105mm cannon that does not ask questions. It moves fast, hits hard, and protects its crew from IEDs and ambushes. It is not a tank, it is a spear. Deployed across frontline regions, the WMA 301 serves one purpose: break enemy lines. Insurgent hideouts dug into the cliffs of Yaga, flattened. Ambush sites buried in scrubland, cleared. Defensive positions near Tapoa, erased. The cannon strikes like thunder. One shell tears through mud walls, fortified bunkers, or armored trucks. It is the vehicle of first entry, and the reason insurgents now fear open ground. But wars are not only fought in deserts. They are fought in cities, alleys, and tight corners where bullets echo and shadows deceive. That is where the VP-11 rolls in. This is not your average armored personnel carrier. It is a survivor, built to withstand mines, RPGs, and booby traps hidden in plastic bags. Its design includes a V-shaped hull that deflects blast energy downward, away from the crew. Its suspension absorbs shock, its armor deflects shrapnel, and its cabin holds elite forces ready to strike. When insurgents barricade themselves in buildings, thinking they own the street, the VP-11 smashes through walls, deploys its team, and turns the ambush into a grave. It does not stop. It does not stall. It survives. And in war, survival is victory. Now imagine something faster, smarter, built not just for protection, but for dominance. That's the Aider Yalan, a next-gen 4x4 tactical armored vehicle co-developed under military cooperation with foreign partners like Turkey. It looks like a beast, low-slung, all-terrain tires, reinforced steel frame. But it moves like a ghost. One moment it's patrolling a dry riverbed. The next, it's leading a surprise raid through a canyon. Then, gone. Repositioned, rearmed, ready again. The Yalen is not built for show. It is built for the kind of war Burkina Faso now fights, asymmetrical, brutal, and fast. In deserts, it chases convoys. In forests, it clears trails. On borders, it patrols like a shadow. But what truly sets it apart is its philosophy. Strike first, strike hard, disappear. It can be outfitted with multiple weapons, automatic grenade launchers, anti-tank missiles, machine guns. One moment, it's a transport. The next, it's a frontline assault platform. Burkina Faso no longer relies on slow, cumbersome tanks from another era. It does not imitate Western military models that fail in Africa's terrain. It has built its own rhythm, a rhythm of thunder on wheels, of vehicles that turn retreat into chase, and defense into preemptive strike. The terrain no longer limits them, it amplifies them. Because mobility is not just a tactic, it is a message. That Burkina Faso is not hiding, it is advancing. That it does not need a fortress of stone, because everywhere it moves becomes a fortress of steel. Let us not forget, the enemy once celebrated terrain as an ally. Now, it betrays them. The dirt road they hit along? WMA 301 rolls in, shells fired, gone. The alley they mined? VP 11 clears it, team enters, ambush neutralized. The border they snuck across? Yalen cuts them off, night turns to flames. This is not fantasy. This is the Burkina Bay battlefield, where every mile conquered is not just a gain of ground, but a reclamation of dignity. These vehicles are not made in silence. They roar, not just with engines, but with purpose. Each one screams a message louder than any press release. We are here. We are armed. We are sovereign. And while the world still argues whether Burkina Faso is stable enough, democratic enough, compliant enough, Burkina Faso is building its own answers, in armor, in fire, in motion. If you believe that self-defense is not a privilege but a right, if you believe that mobility is sovereignty in motion, then say it, comment it, share it. Let the world know. Africa moves. Africa strikes. Africa survives.
They say it is the drones. They say it is the rocket launchers. They say it is the armored vehicles that worry them. But that is not the truth. Because if it were about weapons, they would have sold them gladly. They have, for decades. To dictators, to regimes, to rebels, to mercenaries. No. What they fear, truly fear, is that Burkina Faso did not ask for permission. Not when it bought the drones. Not when it deployed them. Not when it trained its troops in foreign deserts with non-Western partners. It is not the firepower that threatens the global order. It is the freedom to use it without their approval. In quiet rooms in Brussels, lobbyists whispered to ECOWAS envoys. In corridors of Washington, analysts drafted memos. Burkina Faso is militarizing without oversight. In Paris, think tanks debated how to contain Traoré's trajectory. Because Traoré's greatest weapon is not made of steel. It is made of will. The will to say, We will build our army. We will defend our land. We will partner with whomever we choose, not just those you prefer. That is the threat. Because if Burkina Faso can rise without NATO, if it can crush insurgents without French air cover, if it can educate its soldiers in Turkish academies, coordinate strikes with Chinese satellites, and manufacture tactics suited for African terrain, what stops others from doing the same? What happens when the monopoly of influence is broken? The panic is not over rocket launches. It is over precedent. Burkina Faso is no longer a theater of operation. It is no longer a training ground. It is no longer a beneficiary. It is a sovereign actor with its own doctrine, allies, and terms. And that is what terrifies them. Because if one African nation learns to stand without Western scaffolding, others will follow. That is the real explosion. Not of bombs, but of control. This is why every victory by Traoré's forces is followed not just by silence, but by spin. Burkina Faso is isolated. Burkina Faso is undemocratic. Burkina Faso is unstable. They cannot say Burkina Faso is winning, because that would mean acknowledging a new model, one built not on elections blessed by foreign observers, but on sovereignty forged in fire and discipline. One that does not depend on grants, but on grit. This twist is not about drones flying overhead. It is about ideas moving underground. And those ideas are spreading. In the markets of Mali, men speak of armored columns like legends. In the cafes of Niger, women whisper of a military that protects, not patrols. In the refugee camps of Benin, boys draw Eider-Yalin vehicles into the dirt, not as fear, but as hope. Because these machines do not just carry soldiers, they carry a message. Africa can fight its own wars, and Africa can win. They said Africa must wait, that sovereignty could be borrowed, that security must come packaged with supervision. Burkina Faso answered, with drones that whisper death, with armored vehicles that roar into ambushes and emerge victorious, with soldiers who no longer salute foreign flags, but salute their land. This is not just a story of one army. It is the rebirth of a continent's backbone. No longer begging for defense, no longer trading peace for dependence, no longer mistaking silence for stability. Burkina Faso has drawn a line, and now the question is not whether others will follow, but who dares to stop them. If the fire of Traoré's revolution lives in you, if you believe sovereignty is not given, but taken, then rise with us. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this message. Africa will defend itself, and the world must watch.